A lot of firms task their admin staff with manually exporting each team member's calendar and sending them a summary email of the events they're going to have today. What if I tell you that Clio Manage can actually do this automatically every day for every team member of your firm? In the morning, each team member will get an email just like this with the summary of the events that they're going to have today, with their respective time, the subject of the event. If it has been assigned an event type, it will also display it over here. The location, be that physical or the link, Zoom, other video conference meeting. The name and direct link to the matter. So if we click this, it will immediately take us to the Clio Manage Matter page. And finally, also the list of attendees, be that the firm users or any of our clients or other contacts that we have defined on that event. Now, this will work both for attorneys and also paralegals or support staff. For example, here we have Laura, right? She has an all-day event and then just a few work blocks and then an internal meeting as well. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can set up an automation just like this for your firm very quickly with the Make.com automation platform. Let's get going. Hey there, my name is Martin Kravchenko and I'm the CTO at Swans, where we help growing law firms implement automations just like this in their firms on a daily basis. Now, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the setup of this automation, each one of the modules. What I should also note is that you can actually get a template of this exact automation and just import it into your Make.com account by following the link down below, completely free of charge. Now, let's actually get going. Let's first have a look at our Clio Manage calendar and see how that is set up. So in my firm, I have two users. It's myself and a support staff, Laura Martinez. Now, as you can see myself, I have a few events defined today, right? I have a court hearing, which is actually linked to a matter. If we open it up, right, it has a location. It is linked to a matter, and then it also has that matter's contact as one of the attendees. It is saved to my calendar, and it has an event type of court hearing. That's why it's also showing up in a different color. After that, I have a client interview. So that's another event that is linked to a matter and also has that matter's contact over here. And it is, in this case, a Zoom conference. Then I have a PNC consults block, which is just an internal event, and performance evaluation with Laura Martinez, Laura being an entity as well, and having an event type of internal. That's why, again, it's showing up in a different color over here. Now, in terms of Laura's calendar, we have an all-day event, which has focus on admin, a deep work block, another deep work block, which is, again, just purely on her calendar, and the performance evaluation that I just talked about right now. So we have these two users and we have these two calendars. The idea is that in the morning, right, every morning of a working day, the automation would look up all the events in the firm, would look up all their events that they have in their calendars and send them a summary email just like this to their email address with the summary of all the events that they're going to have on that particular day. Right, so let's actually see how that is set up. Now, the first module that we have over here is getting all of the user calendars. Now, Clio Manage already does have an inbuilt, let's say, integration with Make.com, but actually doesn't have the modules that we need for the specific automation, i.e. getting the user calendars and getting the events. So that's why we are making a custom API call to the Clio Manage API. You can find the documentation for that on docs.developers.clio.com/API reference. And then each one of these endpoints over here, which does some different action. Again, you don't really need to dive into the details here. If you want to just get the template, you can freely download it and just change a few things and get it going for your firm. Now, let me explain to you how it works, right? So this first API call that we're making to this endpoint over here, so calendars.json, and we are also, we essentially filtering out all the calendars by their type. Right, so there are user calendars and there are firm calendars. In this particular case, we are just looking up the user calendars, right, because we are sending it to a particular user. So we're filtering it by the user calendars, and then the fields that we are returning for each calendar is ID, its name, its type, and also the email of the creator of that calendar, i.e. the person to whom it pertains. What this will return to us is an array with some data, right? And it will contain a collection for each user's calendar, right? So for example, we have myself over here with the creator email, and then same for Laura with, as you can see, a different email over here. What we do after that is actually we iterate over this data array. And what that means essentially is that for each element in the array, all the future modules will be executed once, right? Once for each one of those elements that we have in the array. And so 2 bundles are returned over here, corresponding to the 2 entries that we had in that array. So we're looking at each calendar, and then for each calendar, we are getting the events for today that are logged in that calendar, right? So in here, we are using a different endpoint, calendar entries. We're passing as a query string the calendar ID, right, coming from the calendar that we're currently looking at. Then we use these 2 fields from and to define essentially the time range at what we are looking, right? So what we are doing is we are passing this variable called now, right, which just simply return today's date and time, and we are setting its hour, minute, and second to 0, right, essentially to the start of the day, and then formatting it properly as the Clio Manage API is expecting in this format over here. And then we are doing the same with the to, right? But in this case, we are setting it to the last second of the day, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Now, this will be inclusive, so it will also include, for example, any all-day events as you have seen. Now, in terms of the fields that we are returning for each event, it's a few more over here. ID, the summary, i.e., the subject of the event, the description, the location, when it starts, when it ends, whether it's an all-day event or not, what is event type, right? For example, court hearing or internal, as we have seen before, the matter ID and display number, who are the attendees with their name and emails, and who is the calendar owner, being the name of the person. Now, after this, what we get is, for example, for my calendar over here, we have again an array of collections, and each collection represents a separate event that I have in my calendar. And so, for example, we have the court hearing, which has this ID, right? It has a location, it has a start and end date, it has also a calendar entry event type, it is linked to a particular matter, this Marvin Inc., and it has one attendee, apart from the calendar owner, i.e. myself, who is this the contact, right, on this matter. And also the calendar owner being myself, right? If I look, for example, at the event that I have with Laura later in the day, we can see that I'm the owner of that event, but then we have a user over here, Laura Martinez, as the attendee. Fantastic, right? What we do after that is we iterate over those events, right? What we do also over here is once it is returned by the API, we actually sort that array in ascending order based on the start end date, right? So they display in chronological order in our email. And after that, we are iterating upon them, just previously as we did with the actual calendars. So we are iterating each calendar, and then we are iterating over each entry in that calendar. The next after that is actually aggregating all of those events in that particular calendar into text, right? And what we do over here is essentially building this table that you can see over here, which will contain all the rows and the information about each one of these events. And so let's look at its setup. The source module is the iteration of the events. We are then separating them by a new row. And for each one of them, we are essentially for each event that we are looking at, right, we are adding the following text. And so this will look a bit cryptic, but if you're familiar actually with HTML, this will sound quite familiar. So in HTML, we can That's how essentially web pages work. That's how a lot of the emails that automatically sent out as well work. And that way actually what allows us to build this table over here directly inside of the email and not, for example, have to attach a PDF or something like that. Each one of these tags over here essentially defines a new cell, right, in this table over here, right? So there's a cell, for example, for the time, a cell for the subject, a cell for the event type, etc., etc., etc. Right? So first of all, we are defining the row, and what we are doing over here is we're just checking the order position of the bundle that we are looking at. If it is, when divided by 2, its remainder is 0, it's even, then it will have one color, and if not, it will have a separate color, right? It will just be simply white background, just so that we can more easily see, right? As you can see over here, alternating rows have different background colors. This is how this is achieved. After that, we have, as I told you, the different cells, right? So for example, we are checking that if the event is all day, right, then we'll mark it as all day. Otherwise, we'll format the day, the start and end date time to the format that we want. In this case, it is, standard US format over here. Then we have the summary or the event subject. We have the event type name. We have the location. Then we are building a link, right? So this is an href. That's a link, which will be displaying the matter display number, and will take us to the Clio app, to that particular matter ID if we click on it, right? And so that's what allows us to have then this action. For example, we're here 47 Harris. If we then click on it, it will open up that matter in our browser, right? And we'll be able to view any of its details that we want. This is how this is achieved. And then finally, we are essentially merging the calendar owner name and the names of any attendees on that particular event into this last cell over here, right? And you may ask why we also add in the owner. Well, in cases, for example, for the email to Laura, we have this internal performance evaluation. In this case, the calendar owner is actually myself, and she just appears as an attendee, right? And so to make sure that my name is also displayed over here, we not only need to include the attendees, but also the calendar owner in all of them. And so that's why, for example, for just her events, she only sees herself, and then for this other event where it's both of us, she sees both of our names. This is last cell over here. Obviously as well, you can modify this, right? You can add more cells potentially. If you need help with formatting, then you can actually just ask a Claude or ChatGPT, throw it in there and say like, hey, please add a cell for X, and we'll format it nicely. And the last step, after we have essentially the aggregated text over here, right? So it will essentially just be a long text string with each event contributing to this structure. We're then sending the actual email to the user, right? We are sending it, for example, in this case, from an automation ad account. I recommend setting it up. That is very useful if you're running any kind of automations. We are sending it to the email of the creator of the calendar, right? So that is the first iterator that we've been looking at over here in module number 3, this one over here. The subject line says your events for, and then the date, today's date formatted nicely. So in this case, it's just, for example, 27th of December, 2024. And then the actual name of, of the person, right? Of the calendar, and thus the person. Then it's dear, name, please find the list of your events today below. It then sets up the table with the headings that we want, right? So for example, time, subject, event type, etc. And then after that, we're pasting the actual content, the body of the table in here, this aggregated text that we had from module number 6, and then closing of the table, right? So in the email itself, we're building the headers, and then we're simply pasting the rest of the body that we constructed in step number 6. And then the signature ABC law for our management, right? No attachments. And so after we have set all of this, what we simply need to do is we need to schedule it, right? Because it will run on a predefined schedule, and as soon as it runs, it will send out these emails. To achieve that, what you can do is just click on this clock over here. You can define, for example, if it will run every day, on specific days of the month, or specific days of the week. So in this case, I selected days of the week. I have selected all the work days, excluding Saturday and Sunday. And then I also set the time for it to run at 6 a.m. Obviously as well, you can change it to whatever you want over here. Then just click OK and click Activate the scenario. You can save all the changes. And as you can see, the scenario is now running. And so it will run at 6 a.m. on every workday, or as you have defined it. And then also you can run it once if you want for testing purposes. So let's just click run once and see how that email looks like. As you can see, the steps have been executed. We had 2 calendars, so all of these got executed twice, once for each one of these calendars. And if we now have a look at my actual email, we can see that we have these 2 new emails, your events for the 27th of December, right? The list of my events with all the details, and to Laura's address was sent her email with a list of all her events. And before we wrap up, an important note to have in an account is these 2 modules over here, the getting the user calendars and get events, have a limit of 200 records. So it means maximum of 200 calendars returned and 200 event entries returned per calendar per day, right? I don't think anybody of you will hit it, but that's something to have in mind. If you would have, for example, more than 200 events per day per calendar, or more than 200 calendars, then you need to set up pagination, and it is still possible to do, which like the scenario will look a bit more complex. And just like this, you can build an automation that will potentially save hours to your admin stuff every day, especially if you have a bigger firm, and fully automate this tedious process. Again, you don't have to set it up all by yourself. You have the template available in the link down below in my bio. And if you have any questions, just let me know. I would be really happy to help you out and solve any issues that you may have. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe to see more. Thank you.